Hello to all and welcome back to War Thunder. I'm Brother Templar, and for today's video we're going to be starting a new series, something that I'm going to call Which is Better, where we put two vehicles head to head, two that people often argue about which is better, and hopefully by having a look at the stats and their performances in game, we can see which one is better than the other, and make all of those arguments you may well have with other people, well, actually have some merit to them. So, without further ado, let's get straight into today's video, as we're comparing the Wirbelwind versus the Ostwind. Two Tier 3 German anti-aircraft vehicles that, although are very similar, and I have to admit that I do like both of them, they do have one massive difference between them, that being their battle ratings, that are an entire battle rating of difference between them. And yet, despite this battle rating difference, many people still choose the Wirbelwind over the Ostwind, despite the fact that it is an entire battle rating lower. And in fact, some even go as far as to say the Wirbelwind is actually better than the Ostwind. So that's what we're really here today to find out, if whether or not the Wirbelwind actually is as good as, if not better than the Ostwind, or if Gaijin have got their facts right, and in fact the Ostwind should be an entire battle rating higher than the Wirbelwind. So, without further ado, let's get straight into this video, and finally answer this question for once and for all. So, starting off with the Wirbelwind, and the first thing you'll notice about what the Wirbelwind has over the Ostwind is that it has far more primary weapons, as the Wirbelwind has 4 cannons, rather than the Ostwind's 1. Now it is true to say that both of these tanks also have 7.92mm MG34s in their hull, but unfortunately you still can't use them in this patch of the game, amazingly. I mean, Gaijin have gone out of their way to start adding things like smoke, but they haven't even been bothered enough to add something as simple as just making the front turret work. But I digress, as the second advantage of the Wirbelwind is that it has a very good fire rate, that being 450 shots per minute, which in comparison to the Ostwind's 250 shots per minute, it fires significantly more shots, and keep in mind that's only per cannon, as of course this tank has 4 of them, which means that it fires a hell load more shots per minute than its Ostwind equivalent. The last major advantage of the Wirbelwind over the Ostwind is its turret rotation speed, which is pretty fast, as the Ostwind's fully upgraded is only 27.8 degrees per second, which is pretty fast for a tank, but nothing special for an AA. However, the Wirbelwind, on the other hand, has a max turret rotation speed of a blisteringly quick 47.6 degrees per second, which means that in 2 seconds this will turn 90 degrees, 4 is 180, and in only 8 seconds the Wirbelwind can turn an entire 360 degrees. So yeah, that is very fast, and easily one of the fastest turret rotations in the game. And so with that in mind, it's time to go over to the Ostwind and see what that has over its predecessor. The Ostwind's first major advantage over the Wirbelwind is its main armament, as although it only has 1 cannon rather than the Wirbelwind's 4 cannons, its 1 cannon is luckily considerably larger than the Wirbelwind's, as it is 37mm, which in comparison to the Wirbelwind's 4 20mm cannons shows that, well, these shells are going to hit a lot harder. And indeed, it is true to say that the 4 20mm cannons you get in the Wirbelwind actually do sort of add up to the equivalent of the Ostwind's 37mm cannon, or some will say, but depending on who you are, will of course depend on whether or not you think it's better to have one large cannon or loads of smaller ones. Although in saying that, it is also true to say that despite this being a considerably larger cannon and actually being designed a lot later in the Second World War, it actually has very little more penetration value. In fact, its maximum penetration value is only 1mm more than the Wirbelwind, so as far as armor piercing is concerned, they're both pretty much identical. The second major advantage of the Ostwind is its reload rate, as with an absolutely mind-boggling speed of 0.3 seconds, it is one of the fastest reloading tanks in the game, and basically means that you could quite easily say that this tank, well, it doesn't reload. It just fires a constant stream of ammunition, and it's basically as if you never reload at all. So yeah, I definitely call that a pretty major advantage of the tank. And the last major advantage of the Ostwind over the Wirbelwind is that its turret armour, once you take into consideration angling, is about 35 to 40mm, when the Wirbelwind is only about 17 to 18mm. So simply put, the Wirbelwind will survive 30 cals, but the Ostwind will survive 50 cals and maybe even a bit beyond. So, with all that in mind, it's time to look at these two vehicles as a whole and finally answer the question of which is better. And well, after a lot of consideration, I've come to the conclusion that these two tanks are very evenly matched, in fact near identical. And well, before we answer that question, we need to firstly answer the question of should they be an entire battle rating apart if they truly are so similar? And well, no, I don't believe for 1 second that this vehicle should be an entire battle rating lower than the Ostwind. It's just too similar, and I cannot for the life of me understand why Gaijin chose to put them at such a massive difference. But overall, I would actually say, on the subject of which is better, that it is the Ostwind that does win it. So yes, I do think the Ostwind should be a 0.3, maybe a 0.5 of battle rating higher than the Wirbelwind at a push, but that would be about it. Although, in saying that, it must be said that that's a pretty hollow victory for the Ostwind. As well, the Ostwind is pretty well balanced at a 4.7, and I don't really have any issues with it balancing-wise, but what I do have quite a lot of issues with is the Wirbelwind. Yes, at only a 3.7 battle rating, its quad-firing 64mm penetrating, high velocity shot-firing rapid-fire cannons, it is absolutely amazing and is a load of fun to drive. And in fact, I drive the Wirbelwind around every chance I get, even at the start of a game, because it's so fun. And yeah, it's overpowered, alright? It is definitely overperforming because, well, you've seen in these videos, I've gone on entire killing streaks in an AA truck on up-tier games. I mean, I don't think that's supposed to happen. But yeah, so for what it's worth, the Ostwind is the better tank, but it is the Wirbelwind that definitely wins my heart in this little competition, as it is by far and away the most fun to drive, and in my opinion should probably go up to a battle rating of about, 4.3 or something, and keep the Ostwind at its 4.7, as it's about average there and is not overperforming. And with that, I thank you all for watching the first episode of Which is Better. And if you did enjoy, then do make sure to like, comment and subscribe and say how much you liked it. Or, if you prefer, you can always go to my Twitter and say to me what you think should be put on this next for a chance of it being shown. Or perhaps you just want to have a bit of a chat with me about pretty much any subject you want, then I'm also there on Twitter for you. And, of course, if you like my work and you want to give it a bit of cash, then my Patreon is always available for any amount of money you deem my work to be worth. So, I thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, I'll say thank you very much, and I'll see you then.